So the church that I was a part of, it was a predominantly black church, very non-denominational. And the pastor, we were meeting like in hotel ballrooms and conference centers and whatnot like that. And I remember that Sunday, that man stood up there and said, I read this book and it absolutely changed my life. It's gonna change the way we do ministry. And he picked up The Purpose-Driven Life. And from there, everything deteriorated from there.
Jason Whitaker, apologist, blogger, YouTuber. Jason is a staunch defender of the Christian faith. He currently runs a YouTube channel and a podcast called Dear Woke Christian, a channel dedicated to critiquing critical theory, Wokism, and other cultist ideologies. His videos are an open letter to Christians who claim to be woke, to compare CRT to what Scripture says. But most importantly, Jason is a father to his wife and kids, and serving faithfully as a deacon in a Presbyterian Church in Georgia. In this episode, we discuss our review of the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill podcast, why Jason left the Purpose-Driven Church, and how to shake babies.
And to go back, I don't think, because I mean, we've seen, I'm sure we could probably compare notes about people who've fallen away. I've been big on the Christian rapper, The Fanatic, who renounced his faith recently.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What was his name?
Brady Goodwin.
Yeah, I think my friend, he actually sent me an article of that. Yeah, but go on.
So I did a couple videos on that and such like that. But we've seen like quite a few people who at one time were solid. I mean, I'm listening to his album, I'm like, wow, he was saying some very convicting things. And to know that he's turned his back on it. But one of the things that people get really up in a tizzy about is election. And they like to say that we Calvinists or Reform guys are prideful. And I'm like, there's probably a level of truth to that. I said, well, first of all, I don't know if everybody that they're referring to would actually fall under the category of Reformed or Calvinist. I don't like saying Calvinist because a lot of people get their shorts in a bunch about Calvin. So I like, hey, Reform. But I don't know if all those people are actually Reformed to start with. But watch this. Some of those people that are not Reformed, maybe they were just kind of like your Mark Driscolls, the young, restless, and Reformed. Remember that crowd of folk? And a lot of those guys fell away. Chan, Driscoll, all those guys have kind of spread out. And one of the things I think is that they don't fully understand what you just said, the humility that comes from the fact that Christ chose me. Yeah. They just get angry, they get upset about the idea that God would save some and not save others, or that he elects to save some and elects not to save others. And they get bothered by that. And I'm not saying that that's everybody, but that definitely would probably be, I've heard Mark Driscoll.
Yeah, he just recently renounced Calvinism, I think.
Yeah, he said some pretty terrible things. I've
been listening to the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. It's really good. There's some things I don't like about it.
I bet you, okay, give me one thing you don't like.
Well, one thing I don't like is that, first off, it does a good job telling a story. It tells a good story about how Mars Hill rose to fame and popularity. Yes. What I don't like about it is that when it shows important doctrinal issues like complementarianism and church structure and all that, it never gives a biblical definition as to what they are. Mm-hmm. So you have Mark Driscoll's view throughout the entire time, and you're like, this is complementarianism? Ugh. But the reality is, Mark Driscoll is just a disgusting pastor.
He's a disgusting, terrible dude. No, I agree, and that was one of my issues. I felt like, have you ever watched anything by Jude 3?
No. Remind me again what Jude 3 is.
Jude 3 is allegedly a Christian apologetics show. They have a channel, Jude 3, and they're based out of Philly. And one of their segments, one of the things they do is they do this thing called Why I Left the Church. So they'll sit down, the hostess, and maybe a pastor, and they'll listen to 5 or 6 people talk about what their issues were and why they left the church and where they are now. the problem is they let these people go. They let them run out 2, 3, 4 episodes of false ideas, false ideologies, bad theology, bad examples, and whatever. And then they try to, at the end, try to reel them back in. There's not enough time to reel all that craziness back in. So they don't address the problems that these people say. So I felt like the rise and fall of Mars Hill was very similar. They let these things run, and they never wait, hold on. And you can tell they did a fantastic job telling the story. Yes. There's a very similar story to the church that I left. Very lots of similarities, but they did a great job telling the story. I want to give them credit on the storytelling. Their doctrinal whatevers were there was. I'm glad I was relying on you to just tell the story. That's all. But I saw that, like with whatever that episode was about marriage and the relationship with women and all that kind of stuff. It was very heavy on. That's not what we believe. Like Mark was just he should never have been a pastor, period. But he's not the face of Calvinism or Reform guys at all. So, period.
The first episode, I think they mentioned like he was the guy into like reform, Young West Reform, and they just mention it and then they just move on. And it's just like, I wasn't sure like what was their intention like in mentioning reform, like, because if you actually understood Reformed theology, we discuss, election and complementarianism and all that, but not in a skewed fashion like Markriscoll does.
He was really out of. So yes, I totally get that, and I did think it was a good documentary. Yeah. I thought if you just approach it from I want to understand what happened. I live in Arizona. I just want to know what happened with this church, or was it? Yeah, they were in.
It's actually it started in Seattle, Washington, and then after he left, he then went to Phoenix, Arizona, which no one knows what happens after that.
They're still meeting.
I think so.
I still think so. But if you wanted that information, they give you some good information, and I think they did. I think that like that last episode where they like found old elders and stuff like that. It was very insightful. Gave me a lot of good information, but again, I don't think he gave any solution. I don't think he gave a good solution. And being the fact that it was from Christianity Today, you would kind of expect like, oh, maybe you're going to put a Christian spin on this. It was Christian spin deficient.
I think though it does raise another good thing though it does raise like it's talking about the spiritual and abuse that went on in the church, because you're kind of wondering like, how did he manage to surround himself with people that would rubber stamp what he did, and also like how did he manage to like ward off people that like criticized him? But also goes to show like even though he is a Christian, I don't want to go into questioning his salvation and all that, but even though like he had solid Christian Orthodox views and all that, he still messed up in like surrounding himself with putting God-fearing elders that are willing to speak into his life, because that's actually one of the criticisms that I think the secretary or someone...
Yeah, that was that got her in trouble.
Yeah, that got her in trouble. And go on.
But that church model, he was using the purpose-driven church model.
Yes.
Where I declare myself a pastor. I'm going to all I need to do is start a Bible study, and we're going to go get a building in a couple weeks. Like that, I'm being real generic, but that's really it. That's all that is. And granted, he was already doing bad to start with by him declaring himself a pastor. It wasn't put in place. It wasn't elected by a congregation and such like that. He didn't grow up amongst the elders and such like that. And I really believe that's part of the problem. And we see this, and thankfully you don't swim in this swamp of woke ideology and critical race theory, because I see it all the time. Like I'm just like, you see it so much. It's like, it's silly if you follow Chris Roseborough. Fighting for the faith.
A little bit, yeah.
It's almost like a comedy skit. Like these people just decide they want to be a pastor, a husband and wife team. They just declare themselves a pastor, and they literally walk through these steps. And is gross. So he should have never been, but he started off wrong. Even though he was reformed in his ideas, he wasn't reformed in his church understanding and church structure. And that was the problem. Now, I'm not saying you have to go to seminary and such like that, but he wasn't called to be a pastor of a thriving congregation. He grew his own congregation. That's kind of like a multi-level marketing situation, far more than it's a church. But that's just I have a big axe to grind with Purpose Driven. So I
actually kind of want to hear your little bit of your axe to grind.
So the church I was a part of, it was a predominantly black church, very non-denominational. And the pastor, we were meeting like in hotel ballrooms and conference centers and whatnot like that. And I remember that Sunday, that man stood up there and said, I read this book and it absolutely changed my life. It's going to change the way we do ministry. And he picked up the Purpose-Driven Life. And from there, everything deteriorated from there. It just took much longer than people imagined for it to fall apart, because Purpose-Driven removed a lot of the denominational safeguards. Now, I'm not saying that every denomination is without error and problems, but it elevated the non-denominational situation. So there was, like, the worst thing about it, there is no church discipline. Now, church discipline does not mean primarily, bang, Kuiper's doing wrong, we crack him on the head. Church discipline could be something as simple as, hey man, I saw you speeding coming into the parking lot. I know you're kind of late. Why don't you just take it down a square, man? We want to be safe. I'm giving you direction and correction right here. Now, if you keep speeding, me and the other deacons are going to come and talk to you. You keep speeding. So we're literally, by me just talking to you, that's the first step of church discipline. It removes all those safeguards. So there aren't any safeguards. And what I mean by that is safeguards is that this gentleman, the speaker at the church that I left, he was running roughshod through people's bedrooms for years, decades. And so he should have been brought up on church discipline charges a long time ago, but we don't have those. There are no elders, there are no deacons, there is no anybody higher than the pastor or the chief speaker in this regard. So that was a big problem. But then also the idea that church is for unbelievers.
Yeah.
And you hear that Stephen made a big fuss about that, Stephen Furtick, but church is for the non-believer. I mean, we believed that. And that was a big problem, because if you make church for unbelievers, you're going to have a church full of unbelievers.
Yeah.
And guess what they're going to do? Sin. And we've already talked about, there's no church discipline. There is no way to deal with a guy that's beating his wife and she doesn't want to press charges. There's no way to deal with a guy or a woman that's abusing drugs. There's no way to deal with them inside the church. So you just kind of got to let them. And then Purpose Driven is also just about the numbers. It's a church growth model, church growth formula, if you will. So they got to get more cogs. So once you join the church, you're going to be serving. You're going to be parking cars, shaking babies, doing something.
Wait, hold on. Shaking babies?
Or kissing hands. Which one is it?
Oh, okay.
Oh, kissing babies, shaking hands. There we go.
I'm like thinking shaking babies. Like I saw the meme of where they just dump the baby in like water, like Eastern Orthodox.
No,
that type of thing.
No. So you're gonna be kissing babies, shaking hands, parking cars, singing songs. They're gonna get you in that. They're gonna get you into that machine, because next week we got to get these people saved and get them in the machine, because you're going to burn out. So as soon as you burn out, we got to throw Bobby in there. As soon as you burn out, we got to get Sally in there to fill that spot. And that's all it was a machine of cogs. And so we just keep loading cogs in. Oh, now we can get, now we got eight layers of cogs. Oh, we still lost one. Get somebody in there. Now we got 9 layers of cogs. We're just building cogs and filling machine. That's it. You're not discipling anybody. You're not growing in Christ likeness. And we see that because we watch the fruit. And once you step back and watch some people that have left from a purpose-driven church or at a purpose-driven church for a long time, just sit down and have coffee with them. Talk to them about their salvation. Talk to them about how they came to saving faith. Talk to them about where they actually were reading in the scriptures this week. Like, that's a fun one. You ever want to have an adventure in Odyssey? Ask a person who goes to a purpose-driven church, what did your pastor preach this Sunday? And it can't be from a movie or a book or a Netflix series. It has to be from the scripts. Watch. Their heads are going to explode, because that's probably what they probably didn't read the scriptures. They probably exegeted a movie or a book or a Netflix series. Yeah. So those are some of my big problems with purpose-driven. But the other thing is that it doesn't safeguard families. It doesn't teach me as a husband how to care for my wife and my children. It puts you in a position where you're literally subservient to the main speaker, whoever it is, there at the church, and you yourself, your family could be going down the tubes. Your family could be not getting the care and the respect and the love that they need because you're busy fulfilling the vision of the main speaker at the church. So those are some of my issues, and those are part and parcel of purpose-driven. Like, that is purpose-driven. It is not. Now, I'm not saying that there are not bad churches that are not purpose-driven. I'm not saying that they're not, there's issues at every church. Purpose-driven starts with a lot of issues, though. So most churches kind of started with a right vision, started with a right formula and a right pattern, and they might have some issues, absolutely. My church has issues. They got me. So, but purpose-driven honestly starts with issues, like churches for unbelievers. Like, that doesn't even make sense now. But when I was there, I believed that thing as sure as my name was Jason. I would have fought you tooth and nail that church was for unbelievers, that you're going to invite your unsaved friends to church and the speaker on the stage is going to get them saved and they're going to be shaking babies and kissing hands next week.
Shaking babies and kissing hands.
Okay,
I think you said it again.
I'm saying, you realize I say it on purpose, right? But they're going to you're going to get my friends saved. And so, like, even evangelism takes a back seat in purpose-driven. You're not seeking to, like, talk to your friend about his or her soul. You're saying, hey, come to my church so my speaker on the stage or the video will get you converted, and then you'll be saved.